hear the aspirations of many people that are looking to leverage an AI. They want the machine to think. They want to provide insights. They want to say, okay, what's different? Like, can you tell me how it has changed? Like, how do I really, again, going to this topic of generating alpha, how do I write not only efficiencies, but drive also revenue growth?
I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Cristina Pieretti, General Manager and Head of Digital Credit Research, Analytics and Insights at Moody's. In this role, she manages product development, marketing, technology, and commercialization efforts of Moody's research and analytics through multiple digital platforms, including Moody's.com. For the last 16 years, she has held several senior management positions across Moody's, including in commercial real estate. She was also a founding member of Moody's Analytics Innovation Unit, where she focused on the development of products leveraging artificial intelligence to bring efficiencies in the loan underwriting process. Thank you for joining, Cristina. How are you?
Good.
So this is a very important one for me because I know you for a pretty long time, and I know that you have introduced and created many very successful AI products.
In partnership with you. So
tell me about your secrets.
What's the secret? I think the secret is staying on top of innovations, embracing change. I like to talk about being the disruptor and not the disrupted, and finding good partners, a good team and good partners as needed to execute on those innovations, right?
I know that you not only started with Gen AI, you did it actually before already, right? But Gen AI seems to be somewhat a little bit different, right? It's like, it seems to be bigger. How is your take on that? I mean, I know that Moody's is, of course, a powerhouse of, first of Gen AI too, but also of data, of course. So I'm sure a lot is going on there.
Maybe I'll take a little bit of a step back there, right? Because, and this is something I usually tell our customers. So in Moody's, we've been working with machine learning for a long time, right? We built a lot of models, and of course, those models usually are based on machine learning. Fast forward years ago, and I think that's when I first met you, Vahe, we created an innovation unit because we were seeing some changes in technologies, and we wanted to make sure we stayed on top of those changes, right? And I remember at that time trying things such as natural language generation or OCR, but in reality, I think there was more buzz than real potential there. We tested a lot of those and we said, well, there's not real, the intelligence is not there, right? Fast forward, Gen AI, we did realize there was something different, right? And are we at the panacea? Are we going to replace humans? I don't think so. But do we have an opportunity to really transform the way we do tasks? I think yes. Is Gen AI going to change the things we do our work? Does it have the potential to bring efficiencies? That it has to the potential to actually even realize alpha, meaning, bringing greater insights and allowing us as participants in the financial markets or any markets to, realize revenue opportunities to, I think, yes, I think this is definitely a different thing. I think there's been a huge leap when I look at Gen AI and pre-AI models or tools that we were using.
Yeah, I agree. And it is so interesting that it's still very much debated if it's intelligent or not. But if you interact with it, it certainly feels like it, at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're not only using, you are obviously using it for generation of text, but you also, I think Moody's has rolled out a great product, Research Assistant.
Yeah.
Right. There is also a lot of Gen AI in there. When you roll out this huge, because Moody's has, of course, a huge amount of data. I think one concern that many companies have is that the computational need that you need for these, large language models is actually tremendous. Is that something that you struggle with, or you have problems, or ideas?
Of course, we were very careful at the beginning about what's the cost, and I think we not only encouraged we were very watchful on the potential barrier of cost. But I remember, and I'm sure you remember when we started, there was also demand issue, right? A demand supply. There's not enough supply of Gen AI to be doing that. So that was the first challenge I think we overcome. The second one, it's cost. And in reality, so far, the way we've approached it, I have to say that the costs have not been meaningful. If you ask me right now, that's probably not the first barrier I would look at, but I think it's something that we are constantly watching, right? If I think about the journey we follow with Research Assistant, we started with pretty simple tasks, right? Meaning we started with what we call a chat functionality, which is very powerful, right? It brings research data and analytics. It surfaces it very quickly, very accurately, summarizes those. It can do peer comparisons. But at the end, when we now look back and we see, okay, where are we now? Where are our ambitions? Where are the ambitions of customers? Realize that the computational power needed for those ambitions is going to be different. So I think there's still a question mark, right? So far the experience has been good, but I think we have to continue monitoring it very closely to make sure that we are either adapting our pricing, our commercial models, and we make sure that, we are we're very attentive to the cost of goods sold.
Yeah. And I think it's the computational need, of course, with energy and these things, but also the computer chips are already a problem, right? It's very hard to even get the computer, even if you have the money to get that.
Yes. Yeah.
What about privacy? Is privacy I guess, financial industry is of course, somewhat private industry. Is that a huge issue that you see, or do you say it's almost solved issue?
Absolutely. Moody's has been a regulated firm for many years. We take security and controls very seriously. We have a robust set of risk and controls for everything we do, right? And I've been 17 years in this company. I have met always with customers, and a risk and controls conversation did not come very often when I was in customer meetings, right? It was mostly about, what are their needs? What can the product do? How can we fulfill those needs? To me, one of the biggest changes that I've observed with Gen AI, especially when I meet with banks and investment banks, the first conversation that comes up is a risk and controls conversation, right? How do we protect our data? How do we make sure that our data, it's not, being seen by the world, that, we're not training Gen AI models with it. That's one instance. The other one is, how do we make sure that a user, it's not using this interface and prompting or chatting or looking with information that it's private for the companies, right? There's a lot of course, what are you doing with those information? And is that information being kept at Moody's, or is it going to other third parties? Who's looking at the logs?
Yeah. I think my stance on hallucination, because I truly think hallucination is actually I jokingly say the only feature. If it's not the only, it's the most important feature, actually, right? Because if you think about it, if there would be zero hallucination, it would mean it is just like a Google search. It can only give you back what it has somewhere seen. But the beauty of it is that it actually can generate something new, right? So that part of that you like. You just don't like it if you tell it to extract something and then it does something wrong, right? But we could say creative part of it you actually like. And I think that's also the reason why. And every conversation starts like this. I mean, right? That the system prompt always starts like, imagine you are a whatever. Right? Basically, they are like dream machines. They're almost built to dream and do these things, and then it's very hard to get them into a corporate setting, and especially with large set of data, right?
Yeah, I think there's several angles to that, right? One is, and I usually also get a lot of this for customers. Can you guarantee that the answer to the same prompt is going to be the same? And no, I said, it's even if we limit the data that you expose to the system, which we do, and I'll get into that in the second part of my response. If you and I are asked to summarize a text and, under the hypothesis that we're not going to use any of our previous knowledge, we're just going to look at that text and summarize, the answers that you and I are going to provide as humans are going to be different, right? Even if, and I equal that to, the behavior of the LLM. That's exactly what we're trying to do, replicate more human behavior, right? The second thing is always, when you hear the aspirations of many people that are looking to leverage an AI. They want the machine to think. They want to provide insights. They want to say, okay, what's different? Like, can you tell me how it has changed? Like, how do I really, again, going to this topic of generating alpha, how do I write not only efficiencies, but drive also revenue growth, right? So that's kind of the aspiration. But on the other hand, you have, oh, okay, I don't want this thing to hallucinate, right? And the way as of now that we are controlling hallucinations is by making sure that the LLM only works with data that we expose it to, right? So we say, okay, this is sort of the chunk of data with which you can elaborate your response. And you're not allowed to look anywhere else because we don't want to run the risk of the LLM leveraging a source that it's not trusted, that we cannot put our name behind. Now, there's a trade-off, as you said before that, because you're kind of constraining the power of the LLM. And I think that's something that in the future I'm looking forward. How do we move that trade-off, right? And how do we still keep some sort of low hallucinations, at least trust on the data, and allow the LLMs to be more powerful in terms of delivering insights or, actually thinking, right? More than summarizing.
Yeah, they are very right. The thinking part is very important because this hallucination is absolutely necessary to think, right? Because you need to come up with some new solution to a problem, at least new for you, the LLM, right? So yep. It is absolutely exactly that. Yeah, it's a very interesting field, I think. And in the research assistant, are you? I assume you're of course you're generating text, and assume you're generating tables and these kind of things. What is it? Where do you see the limit there? I mean, theoretically, you could start generating, I don't know, presentations, generate, videos, generate images. Are you looking at those?
Yeah. So maybe I'll start by telling you a little bit about the journey again, because I think it's been pretty interesting, right? Around April last year, we decided we wanted to do something with it, right? And when I talk about doing something is we already had internal initiatives to see how we could leverage internally in Moody's Gen AI, but we wanted to see what type of product could we develop, right? And how would it change our product offering? So with that in mind, we decided, okay, let's start with, our ratings and research content. And the reason for it's pretty well structured and we know the data very well. So, and as you know, it's key to have your data well organized for those things to work, right? So that was, and it's a trusted data set. So it had a lot of good characteristics for us to start there, right? And as I described, we started with, basically chat functionality, but a chat functionality, of course, that services research, that summarizes research. We were very, very deliberate, showing always traceability. So making sure that for every single answer, every single sentence that you show, you can always trace back the content, because it's very important for users to know, okay, I can test this. And if I want to know more, I can actually read the actual document, right? So there was a lot at the beginning of focus on reducing hallucinations, as we talked, and on traceability, right? Always being able to tell you where did we take the answers from. Now, as we launched it to the market, and we went actually to preview in September, one of the things we realized is customers wanted to see more, right? And it's an interesting shift on our experience with customers, right? Because we have many products for different things, but suddenly we realized clients were asking in one single place to see a lot of the solutions or data and analytics that we offer in other products, right? They wanted to, and the reason was because they were, as opposed to coming for a specific answer, that they knew that they were looking to more of task automation. Why? Like, okay, give me a report that includes everything that I would like to know about a certain topic. But so quickly we realized we had to enlarge the amount of data and content we were, making available to the LLM. But the other thing we realized, and I'm sure you've had a lot of experience with that, is that the two realizations. One was with the prompt, right? And what I call the art of prompting. There were users that were superpower users, and we were also seeing users that would type two prompts and abandon the product, right? And that has made a lot of shift. We've done a lot of work in prompt engineering. We've done a lot of user training. We monitor, the engagement with the product, because we know a lot of it's Like, have you managed the right prompt? So that was one issue, and it still continues to be an issue, although we've made a lot of progress. The other thing we realized, it's with some things, when you gave too many parameters to LLM, it would get confused. So I'm going to give you, of course, I work in financial services. So let's say that you wanted to identify a set of companies that met 4, 5, 6, 10 criteria, right? They have this size of revenues, this EBITDA. They are in the metals and mining sector in this geography with this number of employees. The LLM, with those type of queries, you know it better, doesn't work. So we went to our second, I would say the second phase of this project, which is what we like to call text to code, which is basically, we are reading the text, generating a SQL query, using SQL in the background, and then, of course, using the LLM again back to generate something. And that's kind of second phase, which is what we call advanced query. Now, the third phase, which is what we're working on now, it's to me the most exciting one, which combines a lot of these things. And it's actually the ability to do a complete task and look at the workflow of our clients and see, okay, you are, for example, when you come to your work, if you're a banker, you want to identify people that you would like to pitch a solution to, and you want to have the materials prepared for you to pitch that deal. And it's the ability to do a complete task, right? And also to customize it to customers. So to me, this is evolving super quickly, and the potential, as you say, as you make progress, you realize how big the potential is. I believe that this is going to completely change our web interaction, right? I'm not sure we will have web pages, and I manage a team which still manages almost everything that you see in Moody's.com, and we're still building web pages and updating. But I do think that we are on a path here where your web interaction is going to be radically different, right? And we're not even talking as of now of APIs and a lot of other things that will also change. But I think the website, as we know, will dramatically change.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I had in this Hybrid Minds podcast, I had a person from Walmart, and they were saying, and I didn't know that Walmart is like the third largest IT company in this world, basically, because they have such a huge staff of engineers. And they were exactly saying that. They're saying like every person who will come to our website will see something entirely different. It will not be a website anymore. It was like fully customized to what that person or what we think that person wants to see, basically. But when you say a full task, I'm pretty sure it's like some kind of agentic system, right?
Oh yes, yeah. So that's the other thing, and thank you for. We are starting to work also with agents of agents, right? And the potential there is immense, right? Again, I'm going to use an example of financial markets, right? Almost every financial institution has some portfolio of names that they have to monitor. And what I mean by that is they've either invested in it, they have, some sort of loan that they have provided, or you can imagine any sort of relationships. Yeah. And you have to know how that investment or loan is tracking. How is the company doing? Now, there are thousands of metrics that you can be monitoring to see, if it's keeping the quality you want, if it's improving and you should be pursuing more business with that counterparty or investing more money in that company, or if it's deteriorating and you should take actions about it, right? And I think the power right now, that work is generally done by humans, right? And as humans, there's so many names in a portfolio that you can monitor thoroughly. And there's also so many metrics that you can monitor, right? That you can look and say, okay, is this metric relevant or not relevant? And, is it worth? And then how do I monitor and how do I make that it's sure that it's real time, right? That if something changes, I don't have a scheduled time during the year where I'm doing an evaluation of a portfolio. So imagine the potential, like now with this agents of agents, which you can just throw, you can throw the agents to do real time monitoring. Use as many names as you want. You can evaluate the times, the real time changes. And on top of that, you can also do work by combining several tools to see if, okay, is the metric relevant or not, right? And maybe I should not be monitoring and I shut down that agent. Then we can go back to the beginning of the conversation where, okay, what's the cost of that? And we have a big question mark on that, right? So that's going to be interesting because I think we were going to revisit the cost question that you had at the beginning, but potential is immense, right? And the ability to do it again, I think that's a great example of where you're not only achieving efficiencies, you have the potential of doing it much better.
No, I fully agree. And I think it is so, we call it compound AI systems, right? In the beginning, we always had a human in the loop, basically, right? So somebody's in the middle and establishing that was a correct information. Now, you don't need to do this anymore because you can have agents that just continue with the workflow, assuming that is right, until you get to a point where you can verify if it's right or not.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that, of course, multiplies, because if you have, like, let's say 5 table detection models and then 5 whatever kind of models, and then they mix together and suddenly you have 25 things that you need to monitor. So the interesting thing is that the person or the thing that will decide on the workflow in itself needs probably to be AI, because it's just too much data for a human to decide, how am I going to shut this down or not shut this down ultimately. Yeah. So I think that's it's very exciting, right? I mean, of course, there are also many voices about job security and other things. I'm sure you have heard about this. What's your stance on this? I mean, do you think that it's just good, or we have to be careful, or?
It's a very tricky topic, and maybe I'll go back to some years ago when you and I actually first partner, for a product, for an automated spreading product. And I think we had a little bit of that concern, right? At the end, we were automating manual labor, and you could see, I think you see several concerns, right? There, right? You have the concern from, okay, are you getting people out of their jobs, right? You have to also address change, because, you're telling maybe someone that manages 200 people that suddenly they're not going to manage 200 people, but maybe it's going to be 10 people that are going to be augmented by machines, right? So there's not only the fear of replacing people with machines, but also a lot of I would say, I think change management, it's a very old term, but there's something like that, right? How do you embrace change? As of now, and I think you think differently from me, I don't think we're replacing humans as of now. I think we are, there's a reason we call it research assistant or Moody's assistant and assistant, right? Because as of now, we actually see it as an assistant that, yes, can deliver the work much more efficient. Yes, we think there's going to be, human efficiencies in the play. I don't think we're yet replacing the actual human.
So, look, I mean, to start at the beginning, I actually think that in the long run, right, that it will create a bigger economic pie, and we will all get richer. And it's good for us, right? Like with any kind of industrial revolution, we had that, right? But also with any industrial revolution, we had a very tough period to get there. And that tough period to get there was easier at that time than it is now, because now it's happening at a much faster pace, right? So I think we do have, but then again, we also are richer now and we're more equipped, so we can actually handle it. But I do think we actually need to do something, right? If we don't do anything, if we just let it go alone. And that brings me back to your question. I mean, if you look at my company, right? So I'm looking at things like this. I'm looking like, okay, what is AI really good at, right? And if I judge that, very often it is the intelligent things. It is designing a workflow. It is making sure that that whatever data product is going through the stages correct, right? Things that actually a human wants to do. But AI can do it better because they can do it much faster, right? Obviously much faster, and they can process much more data. Whereas when it comes to this, the very mundane, typical, and I'm still going back to this example because it's still a problem, table detection kind of thing, right? There you actually say like, oh, a human is doing it better than a machine, right? So if you just take that, right, and now extrapolate it, it would mean that it's not the utopian future. It's like more, hey, you do the mundane stuff and AI is going to do the exciting stuff. No, I don't think that we will end there. It's just, of course, we will not end there because we won't accept that, right? And that's why we're not going to end there. And as long as we can do that, exactly this, not accept it, right? As a society, not accept it, I think we are safe. The question is, how long will we in that state, right? And I think we are all, including me, like we are all overestimating a little bit what it can do now, maybe a little bit, but we're very much underestimating what it can do maybe in 15 years.
There's two things of what you said that I like a lot. One, it's the fact that we've been here in the past, right? The Industrial Revolution is one example, but when internet started was another one. And you see, and I'm sure everyone has seen a lot of those adoption curves, how many years did it take the telephone to reach, I don't know, 1 million users versus how fast it took any of the social media platforms, or, and those curves the slope is steeper and steeper as we go. So very, very quick adoption, which of course, on the one side is we've been there, we've done it. Yes, our jobs will be transformed, as you said. But I think the time is an issue. We're also better equipped, as you said. We're better at embracing change. But I think that's something that we do have to foster, right? And I don't have the secret. It's something that I always say in my change. Like there's no way resistant, right? Embrace the change. Try to see how can we really use it. I'm an enemy of always saying, I'm too old to do this technology. No, it's the future, right? So we have to do it. And I think if anything, we have to, I don't know how we prepare society to embrace change quicker, right? And I also agree with your example of the tables, but I think in that case, you're kind of putting the human to do the job that nobody wants to do. I'm sure we've talked about it. There's many examples where it's the opposite, right? Where you can leverage the machine to do the tasks that nobody wants to do.
100%.
And then, let the human do the tasks where they can add value.
No, yeah. I mean, otherwise I couldn't be in this space, right? Because you have to have this, at least this idea that you're doing something good, because otherwise, it would be pretty. Yeah, no, I'm very excited. I think that everything that you say is right. Ultimately, it will be very good for us. Actually, not only it is going to be very good for us, I think at the stage where we are in our society, we can't even continue to exist meaningfully without it, because there's so many problems we couldn't solve without AI already, right? Like our finance system is just one very complex system, right? But if you look at healthcare, for example, we couldn't find all these solutions that we found now, or scientists found, without AI in the last couple of years, right? So I think you almost need it.
I would say it's fair to say that traditionally, governance frameworks, rules do not tend to move at the pace of innovation. And if anything, if I would, say that it's kind of imperative, is the governance frameworks, the way we think about regulations have to move at a faster pace to make sure, because I do think we need new / modify different regulations to make sure that we are addressing the issues. So if anything, I do think we need to catch up very quickly there and have a lot of focus on what's the right framework, what's the right governance on these topics. And it's challenging, but it's a must have.
And for you, I think it's even a bigger problem, right? Because you're operating in the whole world. I mean, almost probably in the whole world. So you are exposed to so many different regulations, right?
Well, of course, you also, and that's about existing regulations, right? You do have to be very cognizant about, okay, what are the privacy laws in the different jurisdictions? And you also have an obligation. We have an obligation to our customers, right? We have an obligation to make sure that we not only protect their data in the case that they're inputting their data into our system, but also an obligation that we are providing insights that they can trust, right?
We talked a lot about agentic systems, and another big mega trend, right? I mean, we have these 3 mega trends, right? We have this context window size, which is, getting crazy. And I think that Google, which you're also doing lots of work with Google, is the world champion there. And, but there's also this other trend of tools, right? So things that you can give the LLM so that it connects to something, like give it a tool so that it connects to Moody's research, give it a tool so that it connects to, I don't know, XBRL files, give it a tool. So what's your view on those tools? The reason why I'm asking is this, because, funnily, and I think it's not right, but when the first people thought about AI, right? Mm-hmm. When they said, actually, nothing can happen as long as we don't give it tools. So as long as we don't connect it to something, right, nothing can happen. Which is actually oversimplified, because a lot can happen. Be just talking to a system, it can convince you to do something, right? But the interesting thing is there is this idea right now that if we connect all things together, that they might do things that we are not even aware of, right? That they're just happening. And we don't know because nobody's monitoring it. And I mean, it sounds like science fiction, but you have seen that it can happen, right? So it's not like something that's absolutely not.
I know, but maybe I'm going to have a little bit more of a conservative approach to that, because again, we have to, I think there's a side of the world when you're exploring, right? And you're looking at the potential. And then on the other hand, we are in the business of delivering data, insights, analytics, and sometimes tools for clients to do their work, right? So I think we're looking a lot into integration. And by looking into integration, we're looking into how can we integrate into some of those tools. But we have to be very careful, right? We cannot launch something or develop something when the outcome is going to be uncertain. I think I like to think more about that kind of explorations of things that we would do in our lab and see, okay, how does it work? What's the potential of this integration with a tool? And how can we have a little bit of certainty on the outcome, right? And that's where I basically, maybe that's a different posture of where I see it versus where you see it, right? And I love the exploration, but we have to be very careful. One thing is exploring, and the other thing is having a production ready system.
That's what I admire so much is that you actually do that, right? You build very, very secure systems, but they're also very, very innovative. And that's very hard to do because it's easy to build something very innovative if you don't have any rules, to adhere to. But it's very hard if you have to, all the things to do that you just said to be secure system.
I see it as a challenge, right? And I see it as an increasing challenge because you want to be in the cause of technology, right? You want to be adopting everything. I see so much potential in this that I want to explore and show what's the art of possible, right? Well, how could we transform some of the problems or address some of the needs our customers have in a day-to-day and show the art of possible of what's possible very quickly. But then going back to the beginning of our conversation, we started this conversation today talking about risk and controls and how important those risk and controls are for financial institutions, and as an example, right? So where do you draw the line between, okay, being super innovative, which we want to be, and this is advancing so fast, and you want to be exploring and seeing how, context window, that's incredible. Where we started a year ago versus where we are, but how do you make sure that you have production ready, that you're abiding by those risk and controls who are keeping at the top? And I think that's something that every day we're thinking about, and every day we're addressing and trying to come up with new ways to kind of have a balanced offer in both regards, right?
And I assume I know that you are, because it's public, you're working with Microsoft, you're also working with Google, you're doing, so I assume you're working with all the large, or with many of those large language models. Because there's in Europe, there's not much happening actually. I mean, there's Mistral, which I think is pretty nice. Are you working with some European companies too with LLMs, or not so much?
I'm not going to provide you specific names. I am going to double down on Google and Microsoft because we've been very public about working with them. And we have, a partnership agreements. What I will say is, if you look at Research Assistant right now, we are using ChatGPT, right? But we're constantly exploring different models. And there's a frame, a way to describe our approach to models, which we like to think about, we're model agnostic, right? Whatever we're developing, we don't want to be tied to a model. We are not developing it because of the model. It's one more tool that we will do. And we want to make sure that we can not only swap from one model to another if there's a better version, but that different parts of what we do can leverage different models. I think that's kind of the beauty of this. I don't think there's going to be a holy grail. I think things are changing so fast that first you need the flexibility, and you need the flexibility to adapt new things, and also the flexibility to say, okay, this might be a good model for this, but for this, I might it's either too much or it's not as accurate or as a good solution. So I think flexibility and agility is the name of the game here.
Yeah, you're right. And even if it would be good, right? You sometimes, for some questions, you don't need that many parameters, right? It's just like, I think this paper LLM router, right, really shows that you can, with the ensemble of smaller models, mimic,
and then for other things. So, and you and I have also been working on this, like PDF uploads, right? There's some solutions that work very well with certain parts out of some sort of PDFs, and there's others where you're like, you know what, the standard solution that I'm using for this actually did not work so well with a PDF with certain characteristics, so I'm going to use a different. And that's a simple example of where we try different technologies and we might not use we might not go with our solution of choice, right? So for different tasks, we might be using different things.
Cristina, it's always fun connecting with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.